All right. Hey, everyone. It's Tammy Clark, Executive Director for Stand Up Michigan. And
I am Kristen Megan. I am an occupational safety and health specialist and environmental and occupational toxicologist of 18 years and military veteran.
we're going to give it just a couple minutes while we just talk. Krista gave you some of her credentials. I am an environmental health and safety professional. We are both OSHA environmental health and safety consultants and very trained in the worlds of toxicology, virology, immunology, pathogens, PPE protection, PPE testing. Both of us have done hundreds and hundreds of tests for contractors, employees, medical professionals, and even some of the medical facilities like surgical suites and things like that, where the air quality in the environment, that microenvironment, has to be very, very controlled for the doctors and the nurses. So we're very familiar with the whole mask conversation. It really hits kind of near and dear to both of our hearts, which is why we're paying very close attention to all of this, and we are very concerned as environmental health and safety professionals. So I've also got a lot of medical training. Kristen and I were talking. I said, one of the comments was everybody's like, "What's your credentials?" Of course, as soon as you start talking, they start challenging you like you don't know what you're talking about, or we're some rogue scientist or something. So I've got a lot of medical and construction, environmental health and safety credentials as well. One of the things that I've worked with, I had somebody call me a construction grade safety person. So I had to laugh at that because, lumber is considered construction grade, not certifications. So I had to laugh at that because honestly, just my work in the construction environment is what has really allowed me to get down and dirty in the world of pathogens and hazardous chemicals and testing and all of that. So hazardous materials technician, emergency care technician. I've been an instructor, medical instructor with outdoor emergency care and all of that kind of thing. So Kristen and I are just going to have a conversation about some things that we're both very concerned about. And hopefully as we talk, some of this stuff will come to light and you'll be able to get some of your questions answered. And then at the very end, we'll kind of back up and answer some of the questions that you guys sent in earlier from the last live that I did on Stand Up Michigan. So credentials out of the way, all that good stuff out of the way. Let's talk about masks. So what we do know though is that it is so tiny that it's between 0.06 microns and 0.125 microns. So what that means when it comes to masks, and the homemade cloth masks in particular is really the hot topic that we want to address. They do literally nothing to protect you from disease transmission. Okay, so everybody talks about mask up to protect your neighbors so you don't kill grandma, all that kind of thing. This is what you're hearing from people. Well, what you need to understand from a virology perspective is that mask is not protecting anybody around you at all from the expiration of this pathogen to those around you. So let's talk about surgical masks and N95s, because this is kind of your world too. You've done a lot of testing and things like that. So do you want to talk about masks and different types and sizes and all of that?
Just to get into a little bit more of my credentials, I know a lot of you know Tammy, some of you may follow me. So I'm a military veteran, and when I was in the Air Force, I worked in a job called bioenvironmental engineering, and between my time of 9 years on active duty and all my years since 2010 working in private industry, I've conducted well over 10,000 fit tests on respirators and different types of masks. And my experience in seeing people fit tested failing wasn't just because of, when you get fit tested, there's two different ways to get fit tested. There's qualitative fit testing, and there's quantitative fit testing. And the most common is quantitative. So basically, when you're seeing all these tests done on YouTube, where people are using pulse oximeters and things like that measures hemoglobin and oxygen saturation. Well, to actually properly detect, like you may have seen on Del Bigtree's video from the Highwire, is that in order to gauge the amount of oxygen or the off balance of allowed gaseous exchange rates within the mask, when you get fit tested, there's a little port that goes to your mask that can not only measure the air inside the mask, but what's in the outside ambient air? And basically when you're getting fit tested in the workplace, it's a calculation within the machine that's determining, can you perform certain physical movements, talking based on your weight, not having facial hair? There's a lot of different situations in which you have to be aligned with to pass the fit test. I've seen people faint during fit tests. I've seen people get lightheaded. I've seen people tell me, whoa, I need to sit down. So I have a lot of experience in understanding the limitations, usage, training, all of that. Proper cleaning, decon. Donning means to put on a mask. Doffing means to remove the mask. And the problem is that all of this data, what you're seeing, and that's why we have joined forces, thankfully we've networked on social media, is that there's so many issues. So what we're trained to do in a work environment through federal regulations, through OSHA, is not what we're seeing at the hands of our governor. We just have this blanket mask mandate. And the issue with that is we're not following any other protocols. So if we have this science in the workplace saying, hey, you fill out this medical questionnaire, and if you have things like claustrophobia, anxiety, PTSD, kidney issues, history of a stroke, history of a cancer, certain genetic factors can trigger you to need a further evaluation. And there's a pulmonary test, there's a huge function test in order to approve you to wear a mask. See, mask wearing and respirator wearing is not just what is your personal medical history. It is mostly involved in what will you be doing while you're wearing the mask. Are you working in a confined space? Are you working in hot environments, cold environments? And also, what else are you wearing? Are you wearing other forms of PPE? And while this all really ties into the workplace is impacted by this mandate, but so is it for the private citizen. Because when you just tell someone to slap on a mask, you don't know any of their medical histories, and you don't know the conditions in which they're wearing the mask, and you don't understand what they may be doing, whether this is a parent with multiple kids snapping them in and out of car seats, whether someone is overweight, whether they have skin conditions. You can get maskne, which is a socially acceptable term for a type of dermatitis that actually, if you get in the workplace, isn't OSHA recordable. So yeah, I mean, this is why we wanted to get together and talk about this, because the whole mask usage, there are so many guidelines you must follow. And the most important and the biggest issue with the mask mandates is that there's an institution called NIOSH. It's the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health. And there's also another group that basically any form of PPE that you're wearing has to be ANSI rated and NIOSH approved. And these homemade masks, while I totally understand the intent is to be kind and selfless and help others, they're actually dangerous. And they're dangerous because it's the same reason when you go to your physician, they ask you, do you have a latex glove allergy? You don't just need disabilities or issues that you can't see, like PTSD and anxiety and claustrophobia. There are physical issues that can exempt you from wearing a mask, and you need to know your rights. And it's scary right now, but that's why we wanted to team up and to discuss this, because we are both subject matter experts in this. And I have the utmost respect for medical professionals and doctors. I work in preventive medicine, but we are the subject matter experts, and we are the ones that will tell people in a medical setting what type of PPE they need to utilize. So basically, that's the gist of my major ethical issues with this mask mandate.
Yeah, so let's talk about, because this is such a concern, let's talk quickly about some of the tests. And I'm sure some of you, because I have so many people messaging me and sending me some of these videos that are available online, like the Del Bigtree videos and other videos where we're actually putting people in the face covering, and then we're just a simple face covering or just a simple like a dust mask type of thing. And then we're actually doing the tests where, like you had mentioned, they insert the tube and, you know, we get the reading. Well, we're seeing readings that are falling into the 84, 85 range. And Medicaid will provide and cover oxygen for you at 86. It's considered hypoxic. And yet we have some people who will test very low, even very healthy people like runners and very fit people. We're all different. Our bodies are all different. So some people, their oxygen levels will drop to hypoxic levels, even in a face mask. And we know this because we've done testing with these direct read instruments. And so if we know this, why are we just making this an across the board mandate? That's the question Kristen and I and all of the professionals in our field are asking. I was on the phone with 2 other safety and health professionals today, and we had a long conversation about this. What really bothers us is that it's being mandated at the government level. And these are the government agencies that actually were created. Their mission, OSHA's mission, is to protect the safety and health of America's workers. That's the reason they were created in 1970, to keep you safe, to make sure you have a healthy and safe working environment, to make sure that your employer does not force you to do something that's going to cause health or safety issues for you or expose you to hazardous environments. That's why 50 years ago, when OSHA was created, we have 50 years of OSHA making sure through testing, through partnership with their sister agency, NIOSH, which is the National Institutes of Safety and Health. I can't remember if you explained that or not, but NIOSH. We have 50 years of science. We have 50 years of testing that proves when contractors initially began putting on just a simple face cloth covering, which was like a dust mask, it wasn't even a real respirator. It was just covering their mouth and nose because of drywall dust, wood particulates, wood shavings or paint fumes or anything like that. They would just put a simple handkerchief or bandana over their mouth and nose. And what happened?
They would fall out.
We were killing people. They would have heart attacks. We had people not just faint, but some people, their cardiopulmonary system is not strong enough even to be able to just put a simple face covering over the mouth and nose and then do your work and exert yourself all day. So we were literally killing people by doing this. And this is why OSHA started doing the science, doing the research, testing the oxygen levels inside of the face mask and outside to determine what are they actually breathing in, what are the oxygen levels they're breathing in. And what they discovered was it was hypoxic. The oxygen levels were so low with some of them. Not everyone is going to react this way, but with many people, they would drop to hypoxic levels. And that's why they were getting headaches, nauseated, lightheaded, heart attacks. Some people's cardiopulmonary systems are not strong enough to handle that, and we will give them a heart attack. So knowing that, because of that information, OSHA literally created the respiratory standard that went into effect. Well, it's been less than 50 years ago now for the respiratory standard, but I mean, they've been around for 50 years, but the respiratory standard has been in effect for quite some time based on this science that we know. Okay, so if we know this, why in the world did Michigan OSHA just drop the bomb on us that they just dropped? Megan and I were literally in our cars on the way here to the facility that we met at to do this. And we had to stop for a bottle of wine. It was that good. They gave us so much to talk about.
We're not joking. We had to put our emotions in check because those who follow me know I'm big on saying that your emotions cloud judgment, and there's a difference though between using your emotions because you get your rage because you're affected personally. This is nothing personal. This is about professional. I've been in this field for 18 years. Tammy's been in it for 20. While we have the same type of background, we also have different strengths between the two of us. That's why we're a great force together. And we're uniting to talk about this. When I saw MIOSHA drop this sort of placard or meme that said, no shoes, no shirt, no mask, no service.
Should pull it up and show it. We about died.
The hot flashes ensued, folks. And the reason is, and this is it, you guys.
This is what OSHA's going to tell everybody now.
This is the glare. You see that? Basically, if you go to MIOSHA, one thing you guys need to understand, guys and gals, is that there is federal OSHA. Okay, federal OSHA is the highest law. Every state has their own Department of Labor, or like in Michigan, we have MIOSHA, Michigan OSHA. All the laws and standards within MIOSHA have to, at a minimum, align with federal guidelines. They can exceed them. They can be more stringent. Same with the Department of Defense. A lot of military standards exceed OSHA standards, but at a minimum, they must meet that. So this MIOSHA language that just came out is in direct violation with federal law. This just dropped this evening, so I can't even imagine the type of legality issues that are going to come up. But this is a violation of federal OSHA. It's a violation of the ADA. It's a violation of so many things.
It's a violation of Michigan OSHA.
And individual property rights. Having the governor come in and mandate a business to force their patrons to utilize what they're not calling PPE, which it is. The way that they're backpedaling from trying to avoid these laws is to not call it personal protective equipment, PPE. They're trying to call it like an article of clothing. It's not an article of clothing. We all know when we shop and we buy shirts, there's holes, folks. There's holes in our clothing to allow us to breathe. So anything that's inhibiting your body's natural operations is an issue, and it is PPE. And by you saying it's not about you, it's the people around you, that's completely fake.
Right.
And at what point did we become such a draconian society that somehow we're stating that our individual lives are less important than our neighbors? you know, we need to have unity and selfless ideologies, but I'm going to tell you right now, as a disabled veteran, I have reasons I can't wear a mask. I spent 9 years in masks and gas masks and respirators. I can't do it anymore. Because of my background in toxicology, I fully understand these risks. And not only am I credentialed in those things, I'm also credentialed in decontaminate site management. I used to be a huge manager in the city of Chicago in the event of any sort of pandemic or emergency response, whether it's with a chemical warfare, biological, or even viral. I was the person to manage it. So I'm standing here today as someone who works for myself. I have no one to answer to. And that's what her and I discussed prior, is that people in our field are afraid to talk. You know, my husband, I'll leave his new employer nameless. He would have joined us. My husband is also in my field, but he's also credentialed as he has a master's in public health and emergency management. And people have to fear losing their jobs, and we all have ethics within our profession, whether we took an oath or not. The ethics within our profession is to help employers and employees. It's not just to fight against, you know, the upper echelons. It's to make sure everything jives together, because when employees are happy and management happy, people work safer. This right now is pitting not just management and employees against each other, but it's hurting businesses, because businesses are now required to put things in place that are going to push people away. And one of the issues having to do with mask use was talking about how wearing a mask, this was listed by a physician, wearing a mask keeps you from touching your face. No. There's a reason in the workplace when you're utilizing a dust mask or surgical mask. It is a one-time use. It's not just shift specific, it's task specific. So sometimes people wear dust masks because they're doing light sanding on something, or they're doing something where, you know, let me pedal back. In the workplace, there's something called the hierarchy of safety and controls. So when I was in the military, I worked at a depot base. What that means is basically aircraft was taken apart to the last screw. So every type of industrial operation you can think of was performed at these bases I was at. So when you're dealing with dust, if that dust is carcinogenic, like a chromate dust or cadmium in paint, something like that, do you know that you can't just take a broom and sweep it up? You have to utilize a wet method, and that's to stop it from being airborne. So when you think about that, now think about these masks. The masks are task specific, not shift or week. You use it one time for a task and you must toss it. And the reason for that is because understanding mask limitations, that is what you get trained on when you wear a mask. No average citizen is getting training from masks. The only training I see is on YouTube, and it's by physicians. And again, respect for physicians, but we all have lanes we need to stay in. I'm not sitting here talking about open heart surgery because I'm not credentialed to do so. But when it comes to PPE, I am a court-approved PPE expert to sit there and be deposed on limitations of PPE and the history associated with people having workplace injury and illnesses by failing PPE or proper training by the employer. So when you're wearing that mask, you are touching your face nonstop. How many times have you seen people move a mask down because of sweating and go like this? Move a mask down to smoke a cigarette. You know, let's trade our COVID for a carcinogen, but it's your body, whatever. Our people are they're touching their face nonstop. The second you wear a mask and you touch your face, you are cross-contaminating. Because all those tiny particulates, let's just say COVID's around you, you're touching the outside. Where the air has been drawn in, the outside area of the mask catches contaminants. That's why when you take your masks off, if they're homemade cloth masks, ear loop masks, surgical masks, whatever they are, they have to be disposed of. Now, the cloth masks that people are utilizing, they can be washed. But how many people are wearing their mask and actually leaning forward, unhooking it, folding the mask within itself, putting it in a plastic bag, touching nothing, turning on the faucet with their arms, washing it? Nobody's doing that. And I'm not talking down to any of you. You haven't been provided the training that's legally allowed in the workplace. So that's why we can't use workplace controls for the general public without the proper training and understanding of the limitations. I'm sitting here drinking wine. Alcohol is horrible on the body, but I'm making an informed decision, right? So you guys aren't even allowed at that authority to make informed decisions. And when you're wearing a mask, you are hindering your body's natural immune system from functioning. We have to be exposed to mold. We have to be exposed to different ambient air from bacteria, industrial toxicants, things like that. Unfortunately, we need to do that to have our body be able to allow to fight back. It's no different. I always use the gym analogy. It's like if you don't work out and you get the delayed onset of muscle soreness, when you work out more, right, then your body is able to handle, you're not as sore as much. So when you're just throwing a mask on somebody, your immune system's like, whoa, you don't need me anymore. And then you're more susceptible to getting other sort of respiratory issues, which can include, issues with mold and fungus because you're not properly cleaning your masks. If you have homemade masks, don't use fabric softener. I would boil the mask. Don't put it in the dryer. But this information, if they're going to mandate this stuff, which is still wrong, they're not providing any sort of training. It's so irresponsible. It's negligent. It's dangerous. And if you're someone that's watching saying, well, probably not in this group, but as this video goes around, people say, you're not doctors. You're dang right we're not doctors. We tell the doctors what to wear, when, why, how, for what. Because it is a team effort. It's called a multidisciplinary approach. And I want to tackle something, Tammy, real quick, because I've seen a lot of medical professionals who have come forward saying, I don't know what everyone's complaining about. I wear a mask all the time in my workplace and I've never fallen out. I've done surgeries.
We're getting questions about that. Address that.
I've done surgeries. Well, I used to work at a large VA hospital in Chicago. And in the surgical suites, I had to go and sit through surgeries, watch people, and I don't do bones, folks, but I had to watch some horrific surgeries, and I had to sit in there and conduct air sampling and utilize something called a pedal traverse and test HVAC air exchanges, because what you don't know is when a new medical facility goes up, there is an architectural design and law in place. So whether it's a school or it's the same thing with lighting, people don't realize that. Did you know that there's laws for how many lumens must be in certain areas? These are things people don't think about because we have more of a behind the scenes profession. But the reason that you're not seeing surgeons fall out during surgery is because they have extra air exchanges per hour with excess oxygen and different things in place to actually help displace the anesthetic gases. So they're not getting any off-gassing from the patient. And these are things that the general public doesn't know, and even people in medical professions. A lot of this happens and you have no idea. I'm even in the room with you. Right. But it's true, and it's like, again, it's all behind the scenes. And you don't really know about us until something like this happens.
What that means is, as that hospital is being built, I'm working with the HVAC contractors. So I know the architectural standards and the design that those medical, surgical facilities, the standards they have to be built to, the air exchange requirements, which are much greater than in a normal room. There's a lot higher airflow and air exchange rates that the HVAC contractor has to make sure that they're meeting because of the reasons that Kristen said. And so, yeah, I'm a construction safety and health consultant. And yes, a lot of my work has been in construction, focused on a lot of those medical facilities. That's how I know. And so like Kristen said, we come in and we do the testing to make sure that the air quality is sufficient so that those doctors and nurses and technicians are getting sufficient oxygen and they're not dealing with chemical asphyxiants because of the gases and things like that coming off of some of the machines and the anesthesiology and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to it behind the scenes. So when a doctor stands up there and says, we have no problem, this is all, BS. We work in masks and we work in surgical masks all day long and we have no problem with this.
Well, let me tell you, putting a facial covering over someone without a medical exam, or at least at a minimum filling out the medical questionnaire, is a major issue. I'm going to take a brief moment to tell you. I'm going to say it, but there's an easy way to Google it. There's a standard. It's called 1910.134, and it's Appendix C, and that is the OSHA medical questionnaire. But you can just Google or DuckDuckGo the OSHA medical questionnaire, and I'm just going to go over the most common things that will trigger you to have a medical physical after filling out this medical questionnaire. And I guarantee someone you know or yourself is involved. Do you smoke? Have you ever had a seizure? Diabetes, allergies, trouble smelling odors, history of bronchitis, pneumonia, and I'm not even reading them all. Any history with any respiratory issues.
Any respiratory
issues, even as a child, if you had mono, anything like that. Coughing in the night. Did you know that nighttime frequent urination is a reason to disqualify you? Heart attack, angina, heart failure, history of heart failure, pain or tightness in the chest, claustrophobia, blood pressure. I'm just gonna show you how long the list is Do you see how many? I look like I'm closing all the windows in my daughter's tablet here. I mean, but there are so many issues that if you click yes, you must be referred to someone credentialed in occupational health. There are doctors that specialize in occupational health. This is what we're talking about. We're not just being rogue and trying to be cool. This isn't a political issue. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm neither. I'm for freedom. And this is not freedom. This is tyranny. And this goes against my 18 years in this field. And by the way, I worked for the federal government for 13 years, not just in the military, but I worked as an OSHA trainer. I worked as, my job code was 0690 as a GS-12. And that was back in 2012. So I've come a long way. So I have no one that can fire me. I work for myself. I am a military whistleblower. I've testified. I have whistleblower protection. I fear no government. I fear no government employee because I know my rights and I know the law, and I will use your own law and rights against you. And we're fighting for you. We're fighting for you all. You need to know your rights. I know you're fearing all these orders right now. You have rights. We need people to get together and set precedents so this stuff can stop. I saw an article saying it's going to be at least 1 or 2 years that we'll be in this masks. No
way.
If we all stop and we all fight for our rights and we all sit here and exercise the freedom that we celebrated on July 4th, we can stop this. There are a bunch of people in suits making decisions for the rest of us that are incorrect because they do not know our individual health histories and they don't know what we're doing or what temperatures we're working in or past experience with the trauma or health issues that can prevent them from wearing a facial covering. I am all about protecting ourselves from hazard. Hello, that's why we work in safety and health. But to protect you, the safest way to protect yourself, that hierarchy, let's step outside that and think about our home life. Eat right. Eat nutritious. That is your first line of defense. Stay hydrated. Eat right. Exercise universal precautions. Wash your hands frequently. I don't care how old you are. Sing your ABCs while you're washing your hands. Being mindful. I have a nose ring. I've been mindful about it. Actually, I'll use the back of my hand to twist it around to get it out of the way. You just don't touch your face. And women, you're wearing makeup. Make sure if you're applying your makeup or touching your face or fixing something, you washed your hands. So did you know that there's a study back in 2018 that said the number one reason that flu spread in medical facilities wasn't a failure of the mask? It was cross-contamination through touching.
So it's up to us to stand up. So what can we do? What can you do? And I know that's a lot of, we're all mad. I get it. We're all on the same page. We're all angry. But what can we do? So what you can do about the mask issue, well, first of all, you have rights as an employee. So I know a lot of you that are watching are also business owners. So what can you do as a business owner? Number one, don't go along with it. It is not a law. You are not going to get thrown in jail. It is a mandate by one person who thinks she can control every single aspect of our lives and our businesses, and she can't. So why in the hell would you listen? Just open up, go back to work, and don't worry about it. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I'm a business owner too. So this is the next thought. Liability. My attorney is telling me, what if my employees sue me? Well, don't worry. Your employees cannot sue you in tort. Okay? They can't. Go check that one out with a lawyer. So you don't even need to worry about that. Liability. What if my customers claim they got the COVID from my business and they sue me? They will not be able to prove that in court. So let's debunk the liability issue. Business owners, what you need to be very careful of is people like me that will sue you. I have a lawsuit going on right now for a wrongful termination situation. And if you violate your employees' rights, you force them to do something that is not healthy, they come to you and say, I can't work in a mask. It's giving me headaches. It's making me feel nauseated. I'm sick, right? And you just say, sorry, you either mask up or you're out of here. Do you realize you just violated your employees' rights? You did not make reasonable accommodation for them. According to the ADA, you must. If your employee tells you, I can't do this job in this manner, it's making me sick, you must, by law, take every reasonable accommodation for that employee. That doesn't mean firing them. That is not a reasonable accommodation. Some people don't react like other people, but for the majority of people, it does create headache, it creates fatigue, it creates dehydration, it creates nausea. And by the way, guys, those symptoms are the very first symptoms that the body, that tells you right there, the body is struggling to meet demands for oxygen. Those are the first symptoms and signals of oxygen deprivation. And this is what we train on. This is what Kristen and I look for, and this is what we train people on. If you're going to be put in a respirator, if you're going into confined spaces, know the signs and symptoms so that you can do a self-rescue, right? Because that's the easiest type of rescue, the safest. If I have to do an entry rescue, that's dangerous because now I know I'm going into a dangerous environment and there is a hazard present, and the only thing I can rely on is my respirator because you've already gone down. Right? So these are the things that we tell people. So all these people having headaches and nausea and sore throats, that's all signs and symptoms of oxygen deprivation. So the populace is being put at risk by the government's mandate. So what are we to do? Well, number one, talk to your employer. If your employer simply does what my daughter's employer did and says, I don't care if you have a medical waiver, you're fired, well, then you have a wrongful termination lawsuit on your hands. Because right there, that violates ADA law. The ADA law requires that they make reasonable accommodation for you if you notify them that you're struggling, that you have a health problem. Okay? So right there, that's an ADA violation.
That is your defense. And in the moment, you may be threatened by the government, but there are enough freedom-loving attorneys that know the law. You have advocates like us that can point you in the right direction to cite the right law. Don't be afraid. It's the small minority that can change the majority. And when it comes to this stuff, you can't be afraid of these people in suits.
That's such a good point. And
we control the economy.
Seriously, and we've gotten to the point, guys, that we've let this go too long. We have given our power away, our freedoms away, and we've given control to people who are not freedom loving. They are power hungry. They are very much looking for control, and there is an agenda behind this. And I'm not going to get into that. We're going to keep this focused on the facts about masks. But there's a reason that this is happening. There's a reason that even the agency that was designed and created to be your number one defense for safety and health in the workplace is now doing things and requiring things that actually hurt you. Think about it.